Jim Ryan's friends describe him as a family man, a good softball pitcher, and a hard worker. But this picture of Jim Ryan's heart shows something different. Ryan has a fatal disease and needs a heart transplant to survive. His doctor says that Jim is the perfect candidate for the operation.
He's young, his age is under 50. He's been a very hard-working man. He's been very remarkable in that he's continued to work full-time until just very recently, despite a very serious cardiac illness.
The operation will cost about $100,000 and isn't covered by medical insurance, so Mrs. Ryan is asking the community for help. Her husband is at a Minnesota hospital waiting for a donor, but the hospital won't do the transplant without the money. Mrs. Ryan says in spite of everything, Jim is in good spirits.
His attitude has been just extremely good throughout the whole, his illness. He's has a lot to fight for, and his spirits, and I know, has been pretty much what's pulled him through this whole thing this last week and a half.
Jim Ryan has lived and worked in Madison for 41 years. Now he's asking his hometown for help. Contributions can be sent to the Jim Ryan Heart Fund, care of the Randall Bank, 1720 Monroe Street, Madison, 53711. Kathy Hansen, News Scene 15. Forty-one-year-old Jim Ryan is now undergoing tests to see if he's still strong enough to have a heart transplant. Once the results are in, the search for a donor can begin. A friend of Ryan's has kept in close touch with him.
And Jim was in very good spirits. He's not in intensive care anymore. And it looks like he's going to start the testing, or should have started the testing today, for the heart transplant.
What does that mean then, that testing?
It means that after approximately 10 days, that if a heart becomes available and if we have the money, that they will proceed with the operation.
Do you think you're going to get that money?
We're going to do it by the end of the month.
Since mid-July, checks have been pouring in to help Ryan pay for the operation. His insurance doesn't cover the $100,000 cost of the surgery. So far, the community has raised $35,000. Starting Sunday, though, Imhoff says several large fundraisers will be held to help Ryan reach his goal. Mrs. Ryan told us she'll be returning from Minneapolis this weekend to help with the fundraising. She says Jim remains optimistic despite the wait for a new heart. If the tests work out and a suitable donor is found, and if the community can raise the necessary money, Jimmy Ryan could have a new heart by the end of this month. Kathy Hansen, News Scene 15.
Everybody can see a little bit of themselves in Jimmy with the problems that he's having in raising this money and not having any insurance to cover it. So I think that they want to get behind us because maybe that they can see that someday that maybe a friend or relative of theirs might have this similar situation.
Wait, sorry. What are you looking at me for?
It's back on there.
You got it? You want to buy something? Wait. Put it in the can. Good though, that's over here to good.
3,000 limited edition of the Madison Skyline pictures in dedication of this.
Taken last year.
is the photographer. And we believe it's definitely three worthy causes, and
the project, which combines a couple of things that are important for Madison. Another thing that's important about the program is that it's an emblem of the project will also enhance
fine prints of Madison, and 1,000 individuals, average age of 19, that are paralyzed each year from injuries to.
This is News Scene 15 with Rick Featherston reporting the news, Elmer Childress with the weather, and Paul Brown with sports.
Good evening. Rick has the night off. Our lead story tonight is about the McFarland man who needs a new heart, Jimmy Ryan. We've heard a lot about Ryan lately, but not many people have been able to see him because he's at a Minneapolis hospital. Well, News Scene's Jim Fox has spent the past 2 days in Minneapolis, and tonight begins an exclusive 3-part series on Jimmy Ryan's fight for life.
How are you feeling today, Jim?
Terrific.
Good. Good job.
Jimmy Ryan looks very well for someone who is critically ill. That's how his wife Shirley puts it. It's true, Jimmy Ryan is a sick man. He has an irreversible disease which destroys the heart muscle. His doctors think it was probably caused by a virus. Jimmy Ryan needs a heart transplant. It's his only hope for survival. Such an operation is expensive, at least $100,000. Most of that is already taken care of thanks to his friends and the community.
So now Jimmy Ryan and his doctors wait here in Minneapolis for a compatible heart. That heart could become available at any moment, and when it does, it becomes a race against time.
We have about a 3-hour period during which we have to get the heart out of the donor, fly it back here, and have it sewn into the recipient and receiving blood. If you go over 3 or 3.5 hours, you have to begin to worry about whether the heart will function.
Jimmy Ryan is young, relatively strong. He's a good candidate for a heart transplant, and he's determined to win the battle against heart disease.
There's times when you feel completely lost and down, and the help that I get from not only my wife, but from the people who, in this hospital in particular, the nurses and the professional people who come in, and they relieve a lot of fears. And that was the important thing to me. A couple of weeks ago, I was just, I thought I'd bought it. And they said, no, you got a great chance, and don't give up. Just stay in there pitching, and that's what I plan to do.
Jim Fox, News Scene 15 at the University of Minnesota Heart Hospital in Minneapolis.
Tomorrow night, Jim will have a report on how this whole ordeal has changed the lives of Jimmy Ryan, his family, and their friends. Jimmy Ryan continues to wait at this hour at a Minneapolis hospital for the heart transplant that could save his life. This whole ordeal has changed the life of the McFarland man and his family, as we see in part 2 of our exclusive series by News Scene's Jim Fox.
It's become a regular daily routine for Shirley Ryan, checking in with doctors on Heart 2, the 2nd floor of the University of Minnesota Heart Hospital. Then it's on to her husband's room.
This building has become more familiar to Shirley and Jimmy Ryan than their house back in Wisconsin. This is where they wait for news of the heart that could save Jimmy's life.
It's not exactly a solitary wait. Jimmy's many friends keep in touch, and there's understanding companionship within Ryan's own room. 14-year-old Brad Westenberg of Rosendale and his mom, Beverly. Brad also has a heart disease, also needs a transplant. Jimmy and Shirley Ryan are good people for Brad to be with. They have become well-versed on the subject of transplants. At the same time, this painful experience has brought them closer together.
There has to be something good coming out of everything bad, and Jim and I have had a lot of precious moments, I guess, what I would consider precious moments up here where you just don't realize and take the time to express your emotions a great deal to each other.
I think not only has it brought Shirley and I closer together, it's also made it appreciate the fact of our family and our home, and our friends, and just everything in general is a little bit clearer now than it was before. You know, most people just kind of walk through life and don't look around to really pay much attention to what's going on around them. And something like this really snaps you awake.
Jim Fox, News Scene 15, with the Ryan family at the University of Minnesota Heart Hospital.
And tomorrow night in the final series segment, Jim will report on the high cost of the heart transplant operation, all the fundraising efforts in our area to help pay for it, and how the Ryans react to all the help that they've received. More than $82,000. That's how much money has been raised so far for the heart transplant McFarland native Jimmy Ryan needs to survive. Jim Fox is here with the final segment of his three-part series. Jim?
That's right, Dave. So far in the series, we've talked about why Jimmy Ryan needs a heart transplant and why the surgery costs so much. Now we turn to fundraising. $82,000 is a lot of money. Tonight we take a look at how so much has been raised so quickly and how the Ryan family reacts.
He also had, just as Jim does.
We first heard about Jimmy Ryan July 12th. Jimmy's wife Shirley showed an x-ray of her husband's diseased heart and pleaded for help. The southern Wisconsin area responded with benefits, games, even Kool-Aid stands. And it's all for this, a new heart to replace Jimmy Ryan's faulty one. They're keeping a close watch on Jimmy Ryan right now at the University of Minnesota Heart Hospital. He's passed all the tests and is a suitable heart recipient. So while he and his wife worry about when a donor heart will become available, they don't worry much about money. They still need more for the whole operation, but have enough to be placed on the transplant list. To say they are grateful for the help is to make a vast understatement.
Well, my first reaction is that how do you thank somebody for your life? You know, and that's basically what the money's going to do. It's going to save my life. And I really am dumbfounded by the response. It's been overwhelming.
All that we can think of doing is just having Jim, being able to walk into a TV station or something after he has his transplant, and I guess that's how he's going to be able to show his appreciation, by just the determination that he has, that he's going to fight this thing and beat it.
When I left town on Monday or Tuesday, a couple of them would come to see me the night before, and they said, "You don't worry." And it's come true.
It's obviously got some people behind him.
The fundraising isn't over yet, though, is it?
No, I've got three things to mention. The West Madison Little League will be going door to door tomorrow. The McFarland Service Clubs are holding a banquet Sunday, and there's going to be a softball tournament for them next week.
And we hope a lot of people go out there for all of that. Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
How are you feeling today, Jim?
Terrific.
Good. Good job.
Jimmy Ryan told us when we visited him a few weeks ago that when a donor heart became available, his doctors would have to act fast. A human heart only lasts about 3 hours outside the donor's body. His doctors did act fast. They were notified that a suitable recipient heart was available early Wednesday afternoon. Jimmy Ryan was immediately prepped for the surgery and went into the operating room about 2:30. He came out about 5.5 hours later. His doctors say the operation went well. No major complications noted. The heart now beating inside Jimmy Ryan is apparently suited for him. It's all been made possible, of course, by the thousands of people in the southern Wisconsin area who have donated to the Ryan Heart Fund. Jimmy and Shirley Ryan told us repeatedly how grateful they are for the concern.
Well, my first reaction is that how do you thank somebody for your life? You know, and that's basically what the money's going to do. It's going to save my life. And I really am dumbfounded by the response. It's been overwhelming.
All that we can think of doing is just having Jim, being able to walk into a TV station or something after he has his transplant, and I guess that's how he's going to be able to show his appreciation, by just the determination that he has, that he's going to fight this thing and beat it.
When I left town on Monday or Tuesday, a couple of them would come to see me the night before, and they said, "You don't worry." And it's come true.
Jim Fox, News Scene 15. The waiting game is over here in Minneapolis. An accident victim from Menasha has provided the heart Jimmy Ryan needs to survive. Jimmy himself is in isolation right now, but his wife Shirley was able to speak with him just after the operation.
I had talked to him. He was very drowsy, but and he had the respirator, so he could not talk. But I talked to him and asked him to squeeze my hand if he heard me and knew who I was, and he did. So that was a good feeling to know that, you know, at least he knew I was there.
We first visited the Ryans here several weeks ago. Jimmy said he was feeling strong and eager to get his new heart. That new heart was transplanted into Ryan's body during an operation which took about 6 hours. Doctors say it went well, and the new heart will greatly increase Jimmy's chances for survival.
The patients who do well, who survive the first 3 or 4 months after the transplant, have all returned to their former activities and working and doing whatever they want.
Shirley Ryan hasn't had much sleep lately, but she's relieved that the big day has finally come.
There's been a great deal of stress removed. Even after he had gone into the operating room, I just felt like, for myself, 100 pounds had been taken off my shoulders, yet realizing we still have a rocky road ahead of us, but at least he has gotten to the point of what we came up here for.
So what happens now? Well, another waiting game of sorts. Doctors are now waiting to see if Jimmy Ryan's body will accept the donor heart, if all the therapy will work, and if he will be healthy enough to attend the Wisconsin-Minnesota game in October. Jim Fox, News Scene 15 in Minneapolis.
I'm very encouraged by the way things are moving along. It hasn't even been 24 hours, and normally I think they're on the respirator for at least 24 hours to 48 hours is what we were told. And he was taken off that about 11:30, so he's breathing on his own now. And he's also able to talk, which makes him a little bit happier.
The past several months have been hard for the Ryan boys. 9-year-old Matthew has had to explain to 3-year-old Patrick why his dad is in the hospital and why Mom is at his bedside. You can imagine how the boys felt when word came that their dad's operation was a success.
Well, the house was shaking and we were dancing. Aunt Mary and me and Patrick.
The boys haven't seen their parents for almost a month now. While they're away, Matthew keeps up with his bowling league, and according to his aunt, both boys have plenty to keep busy. But still, they can't wait to have Dad back home.
You miss your dad? Yeah, a lot.
Here at home, family and friends are doing their best to help the boys through.
I think they've done real well with everybody, you know, really working hard to try to make it a good situation for them.
But Mary says a special thanks must go to the family of the young woman whose heart is now beating in Jimmy's chest.
Through their gesture, they have given Jim the opportunity and the chance to come home and watch his boys grow up, and I know that this is the first and foremost thing that Jim wanted to do.
Frederica Runge, News Scene 15 in McFarland.
Everything looks good so far. That's how Shirley Ryan describes her husband Jimmy's chances of leaving the University of Minnesota Heart Hospital next week. When that happens, Jimmy Ryan will have to stay in the Minneapolis area for at least a few months so the doctors can keep track of his progress. After that, he'll very likely come home to McFarland. More on Jimmy Ryan's future from News Scene 15's Jim Fox in Minneapolis.
Jimmy Ryan did not want to remain in intensive care for long after his heart transplant.
I set a goal for myself when I went to surgery. I said that I'll be back in 5 days, back on the floor, and unfortunately it turned out to be 6, but I tried.
Ryan now spends a lot of his time walking the floors, getting stronger, getting ready to leave this hospital. After that happens, he has many options to think about.
I really haven't decided, you know, that the best thing for me to do would be to go back and jump in the mainstream of like I used to be, or if maybe I ought to take things slowly, or just how to go about it. And I'll have a few months to think it over to, you know, to make sure which is the best way to do it. And my problem is completely gone. I don't have heart disease anymore. And from that standpoint, whatever I want to do is open to me.
In addition to everything else, Jimmy Ryan has become something of a media star. He says he's insulated from it all because he's staying here, but he is aware of all the attention. While we were interviewing him, one of his nurses asked him for an autograph. He told her the price was now up to $12.50 each. Jim Fox, News Scene 15 in Minneapolis.
Today was a very happy day in Minneapolis for the Jimmy Ryan family. Today, Ryan's two children were able to see their father for the first time since his heart transplant operation. Today is also Patrick Ryan's 4th birthday, so the day is even more special. But while the celebration of life goes on in Ryan's hospital room, there is always the realization that Jimmy Ryan was saved only when the heart of a young Menasha accident victim was transplanted into his body. Tonight, News Scene 15's Jim Fox talks with Jimmy Ryan about the gift of life he has received, and also has the first television interview with the family of the Menasha heart donor.
The calendar in Jimmy Ryan's room says it all. All the days after September 14th, the date of the transplant, have been happy ones. Ryan knows he has been given a real chance at resuming a normal life. That chance was provided in large part by 20-year-old Sarah Kemps, who died in a car crash September 10th. The Ryans have sent a letter of gratitude to the Kemps family, and Jimmy Ryan hopes to meet them personally. He knows it will be hard.
The other transplant patients who have gone to see families that have had donors from say that it is a very traumatic experience.
What the Kemps family has been going through since Sarah's death could also be described as traumatic, but they're very happy about their decision to donate Sarah's heart to Jimmy Ryan.
I never knew Jim Ryan, but anybody that can get $100,000 collected for his operation must be one heck of a nice guy, you know. And we're just glad that his family's having joy, and we know he's got 2 children at home that he's going to be able to live to see and grow up. And so, if Sarah's heart was in the grave now, it would be doing no one any good. In this way, it's really made it easier to accept the death, I think.
It gives you, I don't know, something, at least to still have something. I mean, we have these people, we're reading the newspapers, we're checking up all the time to see how he's doing, and she also donated her 2 kidneys and her 2 corneas, and she's going to check up and find out how those people are doing too. So we have a lot of people now we have to care about and find out how they're doing too.
For his part, Jimmy Ryan is doing very well. He thinks often about the Kemps family and what will happen when they meet.
It's hard to say what I would say. I think you know, a simple thank you is not really sufficient, and going overboard is making them feel very uncomfortable. You know, they've lost a loved one, and I don't know, it's hard to say thank you for, I guess, in a way, and then again, it has to be said somehow.
Jim Fox, News Scene 15. Ryan now spends a lot of his time walking the floors, getting stronger, getting ready to leave this hospital. After that happens, he has many options to think about.
I really haven't decided, you know, that the best thing for me to do would be to go back and jump in the mainstream of like I used to be, or if maybe I ought to take things slowly, or just how to go about it. And I'll have a few months to think it over, to, you know, to make sure which is the best way to do it.
In addition to everything else, Jimmy Ryan has become something of a media star. He says he's insulated from it all because he's staying here, but he is aware of all the attention. While we were interviewing him, one of his nurses asked him for an autograph. He told her the price was now up to $12.50 each. Jim Fox, News Scene 15 in Minneapolis.
Jimmy Ryan's condition is stable. Shirley Ryan's condition is grateful, very grateful to the people in the area that have made it possible for her husband to have a second chance to live. Since July 12th, Shirley Ryan has been at Jimmy's side at the University of Minnesota Hospital as he underwent the transplant surgery. Shirley Ryan describes the time there as stressful, and the ordeal became more than a full-time job. On some days, she spent more than 12 hours a day with Jimmy, But now Shirley Ryan is back home with her children, Matthew and Patrick, back home in McFarland.
It's been very difficult to be in the position that I'm in. I feel like I'm torn between being up in Minneapolis, or needing to be in Minneapolis, and also needing to be home for the children.
Shirley is well aware that her family's story has been in the headlines for months here in the Madison area. The transplant has made the family, kids included, personalities. Aside from being happy to be home, being aware of the notoriety Jimmy's heart has brought them, the most important thing for Shirley Ryan right now is to tell people just how grateful she is.
Gratitude is a very hard emotion to express, and, you know, I guess the biggest thing that we can say for right now that means the most is just a big, big thank you, and it has saved his life.
Shirley Ryan says her husband's plans call for a hospital release next Tuesday, 3 months of tests while living with friends in the Twin Cities, attending the University of Wisconsin, University of Minnesota football game, October 15th in Minneapolis, cooking the Thanksgiving dinner, and being home back in McFarland in time for Christmas. Shirley Ryan says that those may be ambitious goals for a man who's just received a new heart, but she wouldn't be surprised to see Jimmy reach them. John Yeager, News Scene 15.
Jimmy Ryan says he missed the baseball season this summer for the first time in his life when he was waiting for his heart transplant. A die-hard Cubs fan, Ryan says he doesn't care who wins this year's World Series. He's just glad to be able to watch it. In fact, since he moved into this Minneapolis apartment with his wife Shirley 10 days ago, many old things seem new again.
Just being outside, walking up and down the street, listen to street noises, for instance, like that, is unbelievable. Listen to the birds.
He was just so sick starting from the first of the year that we were just so used to seeing him laying around and just, you know, just not having any energy whatsoever. His color was so grayish looking, and now he has a lot of color in his cheeks, and the red brings out a little bit even more, but...
My big cheeks.
Things are going well for Jimmy Ryan. Doctors say his weekly biopsies look good, and he's now down to 14 pills a day. He used to take about 60. Jim says every day he feels better, and there are more happy faces on the calendar to prove it. But today is a milestone for him. The first day Jimmy Ryan arrived in Minneapolis, he said he wanted to be well enough to go to the Wisconsin-Minnesota football game. We'll have more on that tomorrow night. Mira Kohler, News Scene 15 in Minneapolis.
I told myself, and I told my wife, and I told everybody who would listen to me, and they got sick of hearing it, that I was going to get out to go to the Wisconsin-Minnesota game with a new heart. And I'm going.
Jimmy Ryan kept his promise. Exactly 1 month after his heart transplant at the University of Minnesota Hospital, he joined thousands of other Badger fans at the Humphrey Metrodome in Minneapolis.
It's just hard to put into words what I feel about being able to be out here with all this. It's just great.
The University of Wisconsin Athletic Department offered to put Ryan and his wife Shirley up in the box seats, but Ryan turned them down. He said he wanted to sit with the rest of the fans and be like everybody else.
I tend to be a little bit overprotective of Jim, and I get kind of uptight to have him out in the crowd, and but I know it's his desire, and it's probably the best therapy that, you know, there could be for him.
Jimmy Ryan couldn't have asked for more. The Badgers trampled the Minnesota Gophers 56-17. The only thing missing was the company of his two sons, Patrick and Matthew, who were back in Wisconsin. With this first goal under his belt, Jimmy Ryan is looking forward to his next achievement, going home to McFarland. If all goes well, he may do just that by Thanksgiving. Mira Kohler, News Scene 15 in Minneapolis.
After you've been at the University of Minnesota for 5 months. Ow, ow, ow.
Always sitting on the couch, fighting my car out there.
We were very fortunate
and having a lot of people that stood by us during our time of troubles, and I guess it just intensifies the holiday spirit with us.
I've missed him a lot, and I'll be able to see him. I know I missed out on his birthday, so we'll make it up at Christmas.
Time since we've been together like this for any amount of time.
That's for sure.
Hey, what a dandy.
Not again.
Don't do that.
Cut. Besides killing myself.
Is the lake frozen yet?
Jimmy Ryan didn't quite make it home in time for Thanksgiving this year, but he's the first to admit how much he has to be thankful for. Thankful that he's healthy, thankful to be reunited with his family, even thankful that he can sit on the floor watching his youngest son Patrick cheat mercilessly at the new Smurf game. Oh, there were problems at the Minnesota Heart Hospital, the long wait for a donor, the risky surgery itself, and a few rough spots during the early recovery. But that's past now. He still has to take it easy for a while, but Jimmy Ryan is back home in McFarland. The family is together again.
For months have thought, are we ever going to see the end of the light at the end of this tunnel? And it was an awful good feeling when we pulled up in front of the house and I saw that light finally.
It was still in one piece.
In one piece, yeah.
After 5 months of Minneapolis and 29 below zero yesterday morning up there, it's great. I mean, there's just no feeling like it. We anticipated when we got up to Minnesota that it was going to be a period of time, but we didn't think 5 months at the time.
How does it feel to have your dad home?
Good.
Yeah.
Jim Fox, News Scene 15 in McFarland.
One year ago, McFarland's Jimmy Ryan faced the sterile walls of the operating room as he received a heart transplant. Today, Ryan was able to enjoy the warm sunshine and the company of his good friends. Ryan celebrated the first anniversary of his new heart at his home in McFarland this afternoon. Before the transplant, Ryan suffered from fatal heart disease. His doctors gave him little time to live.
For someone who shouldn't be here, I'm able to walk around and be with my friends who are here today to help celebrate 1 year of the transplant. Hi, I'm Jimmy Ryan. When Channel 15 asked me to talk about the Second Chance program, I agreed right away. After all, I have had a second chance. Without my heart transplant, I wouldn't be here. You can give someone else a second chance by signing a Second Chance organ donor card. You can give the gift of life to someone else. Talk it over with your family. They're the ones who would make the decision. Then call this toll-free number for a Second Chance donor card, 1-800-ACT-GIVE. A couple of weeks ago, I was just, I thought I'd bought it. And they said, no, you got a great chance and don't give up. Just stay in there pitching, and that's what I plan to do. They didn't think that it was very serious at the time, and it could be kind of taken care of with medications until April of '83, when I just went downhill entirely. I had no energy. I couldn't walk 15 feet without wanting to collapse.
In August of 1981, Jimmy Ryan of McFarland, Wisconsin, began his race against time. He was told he had cardiomyopathy, an irreversible heart disease. His only chance for survival was a heart transplant. But before that could take place, he needed to raise the money, a suitable donor needed to be found, and it all had to happen before his old heart stopped.
Most people just kind of walk through life and don't look around to really pay much attention to what's going on around them. And something like this really snaps you awake. So when you get something like that, you just wonder, what did I do to make this come on? How did I cause it? So you just, I guess you have to just sit and listen to what the professional people tell you.
Jimmy's transplant would cost between $70,000 and $150,000. On July 12th, Jimmy's wife Shirley went on television to make a plea for help. The money was needed before the transplant could be performed.
How do you thank somebody for your life? You know, and that's basically what the money's going to do. It's going to save my life. And I really am dumbfounded by the response. It's been overwhelming.
Within 10 weeks, $150,000 were raised.
I think with all the help that I got from the outside when I was hospitalized, realizing people were pulling for me and hoping for me to get better and praying for me, that made a tremendous impact on the fact that I did get better.
Raising the money was only the first obstacle. Now a donor needed to be found and time was running out. But on September 14th, 1983, Jimmy Ryan was given a second chance.
They informed me in the morning about 8 o'clock that there was a possibility of a donor. And at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they said, "You're on your way." And I jumped from, literally jumped from my bed onto the gurney and said, "Let's go."
After 3 months of waiting, a suitable donor was found.
It's a very frightening thing to realize that without a donor, that you die. I mean, there's no way around it. And in my case, the day of surgery, there was about 5% of my heart left.
Jimmy Ryan's family and the donor's family keep in close contact with one another. Jimmy says a very special bond has formed between all of them.
They care very much about what happens to me and to the heart that I'm carrying, and we care very much about them. And I'm trying to keep myself in as good a shape as I can because of the fact of the sacrifice that they made for me.
But Jimmy's struggle for survival continues. A surprising statistic is that the majority of people who survive the first year do not die from heart disease. It's usually some other problem that's complicated by either the drugs they must take or by the possible failure of other organs in the body.
The mental aspect of it, where you wondering about this thing inside of you, stays with you forever. I mean, it just won't go away. But it isn't a frightening feeling by any means. It's a much more comforting feeling than my old heart, because I realize this one's going to work.
Today, Jimmy Ryan is an active father of 2. He recently took his realtor's license exam and is just taking things one day at a time.
Every day that I'm healthy is unbelievable. I cheated the Grim Reaper 5 times, and I don't really have anything motivating me to go out and set the world on fire, but I would like to contribute.
A father playing ball in the backyard with his son, something many dads maybe take for granted. Not Jimmy Ryan. He was near death in 1983 when he received a heart transplant. Now the McFarland resident savors his second chance.
The time that I spent before the transplant at home here and then up in Minnesota, I was very despondent. I didn't think that I was going to make it. And immediately afterwards, I realized that what had been done for me and what can be done for other people. It's a truly amazing thing, and it's fortunate with the technology as such as it is that they are able to provide that for people.
Jimmy Ryan's operation cost about $100,000, mostly paid for by donations from people in southern Wisconsin. And here's another man with a second chance at life, Paul Schneider of Waukon, Iowa. He received a new kidney from his wife. Doctors found an acceptable blood and tissue match between the pair, and the operations occurred May 17th.
See, we both had to be perfectly healthy before we could do this. I couldn't have a cold or have had the flu or anything like that either.
Didn't she have any qualms about giving a kidney up?
No, I didn't really have any second thoughts about that because he hadn't been feeling well. And I wanted him to feel better.
And as for Paul Schneider, he's looking forward to resuming a normal life back on the farm in Iowa, west of Prairie du Chien.
Well, I'm sure I'll have more energy to do some of the things I wanted to do in life. Not that I would really want to change anything, but it'll be just more pleasant to go fishing and work, you know.
Last year at UW Hospital in Madison, doctors performed nearly 200 organ transplant operations, most of them involving kidneys. But there aren't enough organs available for people who need them. In fact, right now, some 200 people are on a waiting list at UW Hospital, waiting for the day they too can get a transplant and have their second chance. One of those who waits is Bernice Broadbent of Boscobel. She comes 3 times a week to Madison, 75 miles one way, for dialysis to purify her blood. She's been waiting for more than a year.
We don't sit here and think, I want a kidney or someone's going to die in order to give me a kidney. We don't wait for someone to die. I brought that up to the doctor once, and he said, by the time we call you for that kidney, it's over for that person. It has nothing to do with you. What would you have us do, bury the kidneys instead of use them?
Back to Jimmy Ryan. Naturally, he's a firm believer in people signing organ donor cards to give others a second chance. What would he say to somebody thinking about signing a card?
Well, I think the thing that would be of a greater impact is to have people be able to see someone who is in need for an organ, to see how emaciated they become and how despondent they can become, and then see them immediately after receiving an organ and see the complete turnaround. The zest and the quality of their life is enhanced tremendously.
For more information from UW Hospital on organ transplants, call 262-2122.
Organ transplantation